Nine is an animated film released in 2009 that was directed by Shane Acker and produced by 4 people, one of the producers being Tim Burton, who has produced many well-known classic films such as Beetlejuice, The Nightmare Before Christmas, and many more. You've more than likely seen or heard about Nine, whether you watched it as a kid and found it extremely eerie and horrifying, or you may have seen a few videos that has something to do with the film.
When you get the hawk too.
Nine is a film that isn't quite my favorite film of all time, but a film so out of place and forbidding out there that even the first impression alone of this film's existence has such a disorienting atmosphere that you almost never see in filmography. This film is highly favorited by some out there, but a film that to others was heavily overlooked. This video isn't going to be some explanation of the film like a breakdown or analysis, but more of the film itself from a standalone point that should be and deserves to be talked about more. This isn't to say Nine is the most genius, best animated film, though some will definitely argue with that statement. Nine supports and lacks many artifacts that makes this film stand out and very superb, but also expose the film's vulnerability and weak points. A good amount of the reviews this film has received is average, but a decent portion of people have talked specifically about the film's plot. I should probably lay out the premise or storyline of Nine. Nine takes place in an alternative post-apocalyptic world where a scientist would be ordered to create a robot machine to advance progress of some sort, but lacked moral guidance and would become corrupted by creating dangerous war machines, inescapably being the downfall to humanity. The scientist would create 9 ragdolls as a last resort, each infused with a fragment of his soul. These ragdolls would be labeled as numbers from 1 to 9 that are created to attempt to stop the war machines and possibly restore humanity in the end. Each ragdoll would represent different aspects of the scientist's personality traits, like how 1 is a fearful, arrogant coward, 2 being kind, brave, intelligent, and so on with the other ragdolls. What lacks about the plot is how it just doesn't have a lot to it and leaves plot holes. It's also stretched and dragged out mainly because Nine was originally a 10-minute short film in 2005 and would receive an adaptation to create a feature-length film 4 years later on September 9th, 2009, which is a reference to Nine. The reasoning to why this film was released on this exact date was because of the obvious numerical coincidence that tied with the film, but was most likely part of the film's marketing strategy too. You don't see events like these happen often, or ever, probably because you can't do something like this anymore. There just isn't a 25th month and so forth. There have been a few times opportunities like these dates were taken like what Nine did, such as the film November 11, 2011 being released in theaters on November 11th, 2011, or the album Hawaii Part 2 being released on December 12, 2012 featuring 12 tracks. The list goes on, but we're getting carried away here. This 10-minute short film adaptation would basically extend to be a 79-minute feature-length film, which is surprisingly still a short runtime for a film considering the average runtime for films in 2009 was 93 minutes in length, and to this day, the average film runtime is definitely way higher than 93 minutes. Another flaw this film has that some have stated is how the voice acting or dialogue in this film is dull and not too professional. I can see where this criticism may come from, as the dialogue can sometimes be absent throughout the film, or awkward including the voice acting, but has been something I've personally connected with.
Are we alone?
A group must have a leader.
But what if he's wrong?
Upon researching for this video, the film originally wanted to be developed without any actual dialogue, which would have been very interesting if it went down that path. The main character, Nine, is also voiced by Elijah Wood, who is a very well-known actor and producer. Some have said Nine is an overlooked film, while others will disagree, which is hard to really say as the film has collected a solid amount of ratings and reviews out there, and the amount of attention the film has gotten on YouTube is pretty large as well. Aside from what cons have been mentioned about this film, everything else about it is spectacular and frightening. Most scenes in this film, to me, is alluring and intriguing. The art style, the characters, atmosphere, voice acting, and soundtrack, it's all fantastic and executed pretty well that is absolutely worth giving the film a watch if you haven't. There have been theories and communities formed surrounding this film that I myself haven't exactly looked deep into, but is definitely interesting as the plot holes and faults this film has can raise many questions and theories. Communities forming around this film is really nice to hear as well. In fact, while also researching for this video, some have created an unofficial Nine game on Roblox Box and Rec Room, which I mainly found through the 9 Guy, which is a channel that posts anything revolving around the film 9, something like a yearly anniversary of the film releasing, which by the time this video is published on September 9th, the 9 Guy will likely post a 16th anniversary video for the film, and so on every year moving forward. I find it very sweet and wholesome that very small fandoms deep in the corners of the internet like 9 exist. I'm sure some that are watching this video are also part of a very obscure and unknown community or fandom revolving around a film like 9, or just any piece of media in general. Many have also speculated and desired a sequel to this film, which I personally am fine without one. I'm not disagreeing that there should be a sequel, but it would be awkward and strenuous to continue on with what there is so far. Though some of the plot holes and possible theories that have been developed out there could be cleared up and explored further in a sequel. Speaking of, the film's DVD includes an hour-long commentary that contains this exact subject more in depth, so maybe the sequel would have worked out. I don't know, I'm not a writer or director. I would love to hear an announcement for a sequel or anything around the film, but it probably just isn't going to happen. Even if the director Shane Acker wanted to develop a sequel, which he does as it has been talked about in commentaries and interviews, he unfortunately just isn't capable of constructing a sequel to this film. Partly because the film 9 is under the film production company Focus Features, and viewing the profits that 9 accumulated, it was positive and a success, but not by a lot. And as a result, Focus Features would likely not allow for a sequel to 9 because the first film supposedly didn't succeed and perform well enough that a sequel wouldn't even be as successful as the first and worth building. One thing I do want to mention is that the scientist would apparently have his own official Facebook account months before the film released and would post notes that piece together a story of the progression of these robot machines being made, which leads to how this film would commence. The Facebook account would have no activity shortly upon the film releasing, though A Sign of Life was perceived in 2017, 8 years later, as the scientist's profile picture would be updated to be ever so slightly higher quality following one singular post. This was, at the time, a possible hint toward a sequel, but nothing really came from this a while after it was posted. This video is basically my contribution and landmark to share this film out there just a little more with this video essay, if you can even barely call it that. I've wanted to make a video essay around this film for months that releases on this day, but I just don't really know where to go with the structure for this video for the longest time. I was originally going to share my favorite points in the film, then decided to just scrap that and eventually say screw it and just explain the entire film instead. And I just don't think I had anything meaningful or big to say that was worth talking about, and you can simply just go watch the film instead. My interpretation of this video was to pretty much share and recommend this gem for others to enjoy whilst providing any other cool, additional, miscellaneous information. Like how there was apparently an official mobile game for 9 at some point that followed the same plot as the film. Basically everything I could talk about without spoiling much and attempt to actually make a meaningful video despite how short it is. Watching the film 9 every September 9th is a strange yearly tradition that's magically been brought upon myself, but probably to others too. I'm not implying that's a bad thing, but it's welcoming that a small group of people come around to rewatch this film every year because of 9. So, thanks for listening, and happy 9 Day. Post-editing me here. Most of, if not all of my research and content used for this video was taken online, and this video wouldn't have barely made it if these sources didn't exist, so here you go. Pushing 9 to the side now. This video is very experimental as I'm testing new waters with different microphone settings, a new microphone, a new editing software. This video is very short, which I don't know what the general response for this video is going to be, considering I usually produce much longer content. I recorded the voiceover for this video 3 separate times with different microphone settings, or just a completely different microphone, like this one. I got it last week. The 2 other voiceovers will be somewhere below, as I would like feedback on which sounds best, because my next video will be my biggest, most passionate project yet, and I'd like for it to be as professional and efficient as possible. Okay, bye.